I know I need protein, I know I need carbs, I should have some fats, but actually I don't want chicken and sweet potato and, broccoli. I actually want cottage cheese and bread and avocado, right? Like I want some different combinations. So I don't believe in done for you meal plans because I also think it's the opposite of owning your nutrition.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepic. This is our last episode of 2021, which is so crazy. So let's get right into it. I want to introduce you to our featured guest. She's a nutritionist, health and mindset coach, former nurse, and passionate female entrepreneur. See, we're the same person, right? Okay. She empowers busy and successful women to lose weight and keep it off in a healthy, sustainable, life-changing way. She loves coaching women to improve their health, wellness, and the way they feel in their bodies. Driven by her own weight loss struggles and being sick and tired of not seeing sustainable results, she hired a coach, then studied, received her own nutrition certification, saw incredible changes to her body, energy, and mood, and never looked back. Now her mission is to empower busy and successful women to lose weight and feel great again in a healthy, sustainable, scientific, life-changing way. So you see why she's here. We are so aligned. You also might recognize her voice from her podcast, the Positive Thread podcast, where she shares stories to inspire millennial women to transform their bodies, minds, and souls. So without further ado, I give you Heather McConochie.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's so great to be here. And wow, what an intro. Like I feel so good about myself right now.
Awesome. That's the goal, right? But so welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to
And
you.
happy new year. I feel like we can say that, right?
Yeah, it's happening. I live in Austin, Texas, and it's literally like 80 degrees today. So it does not feel like the holidays to me, but like, yeah, it's the holiday season apparently.
Yeah. I know. So are you a big New Year's Eve person?
I'm like I go back and forth. Like a few years ago, I went to Vegas and did New Year's Eve with my friends, and it was like
That is
wild.
doing New Year's Eve.
We did New Year's Eve, and like I stayed up till 7 a.m. that day, and it was wild. It was so fun. And then like the next year, I was living in Hawaii, and I literally like meditated for 45 minutes at 8 p.m. and like went to bed at 9:30. So like I just vary. This year in Austin, I am going to a New Year's Eve party with some friends at like a club I belong to, and I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, I kind of go back and forth.
I do too. The last couple years, I have to admit, I don't even think I've seen the ball drop. Like I am down for the count before that even happens. But
I'm 40 now. I'll be 41 in February. And like,
yeah.
I like have trouble if I don't go to bed at 10, like every night, I like get fatigued. Like I have trouble functioning. So I tend not to stay up super late.
I feel you. I know. So, all right, I want to jump into your story, but let's tell our members what they're getting this week. So, guys, your recipe is for slow cooker turkey chili with butternut squash, right? It's so good. So, it's like 20 minutes of actually doing things. Then you put it on the slow cooker for a while. Super easy, set it and forget it kind of a meal, which might actually be perfect for this time of year. And you can freeze it. So really great to like do something and then throw it in the freezer. And then you always have a great choice to keep around. And Heather is giving you almost 15% off the recipe fix. So Heather, in like one sentence, why does everybody want this?
The Recipe Fix is a searchable database of over 130 simple, easy, delicious, macro friendly recipes that includes dessert, salads, all the things.
Amazing. Awesome. And members, this is your last chance to book your quarterly live one-on-one with me. So 30 minutes, just you and me, whatever you want to discuss. And there are times in January, so don't feel like you have to squeeze it into this week. Just make sure you book it this week. So the recipe, Heather's Recipe Fix with the discount and a phone call for you and me I mean, it's appealing. So make sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. You get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions, all for just $10. It's a total deal. When you take advantage of the full offerings, you save more than that $10 cost. As I always say, a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, this membership supports this podcast, this community, and then we can continue bringing you new episodes and experts every single week. So head over to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes. That's easier. Once you're there, it takes about 7 seconds. It's like 3 clicks, a little typing, and you're good to go. You'll get this week's recipe for the slow cooker turkey chili with butternut squash, almost 15% off Heather's recipe fix, and your quarterly live session. All right, Heather, it's all you. Tell us your story and take a couple minutes, walk us through from little Heather becoming a nurse and then eventually a nutritionist.
Okay, great. So I was born on a snowy, cold night. No, actually, I think I was. I was born in February, so it probably was kind of cold. So I was born and raised in Oregon, and I went to school for journalism. I went to college for journalism and art. Moved to LA. Thought I wanted to maybe work in the film industry behind the scenes. Did work in the film industry a little bit. Got disillusioned. After 6 years in LA, decided that I wanted to shift into more of a helping profession. And I decided to go to school, become a nurse. I liked the idea of being able to explore a lot of different areas of health within nursing. I wasn't just stuck in one area, and then travel and freedom. And so I went to nursing school in New York City. And after 2 years of nursing school, I did a second bachelor's degree, moved to Austin and became a nurse. Working as a nurse, eventually I became an emergency room nurse at a level 1 trauma center here in Austin. And during that time, I had been struggling with my own weight. So, I'd kind of gained the same 10 pounds and lost it. And then when I moved to New York, shocker, I actually gained the most weight ever.
That's
Um,
what happened to me.
okay, I'm not the only one. So I was kind of shocked because for the first time in my life, I didn't have a car. I was walking everywhere, taking the stairs, and I thought for sure that I would just burn off everything that I ate. Turns out that doesn't work quite that way. And between hitting Whiskey Tavern up in Chinatown and Think Coffee in the East Village and eating bagels and Bialys and pizza, all of a sudden I had gained another 10, 12 pounds by the end of nursing school. Moved to Austin, I lost the weight on my own, and then it all came back again. And now I was at the heaviest weight I'd ever been. I was the maid of honor in a friend's wedding, and I saw photos of myself, and I was not happy with how I looked. I
Mhm.
was just, it was more like, wow, I just look like not super healthy. And I didn't feel good in my skin. I didn't feel confident in my skin. And I think as women, we're not attached to the number on the scale, but we know that tends to be a number on the scale where we do feel more confident in our skin, right? So I at that point started doing CrossFit. And I didn't really know what CrossFit was, honestly. I just drove by this gym that was near my house, and I was like, that looks close by. Little did
Convenient.
Yeah, convenient. Little did I know what I was getting into, but I went to my first free class and got hooked. I was like, oh, I felt so good in my body after working out so intensely, like the endorphins. I hadn't had that for so long. And I was like, oh, yeah, this has been missing. So I signed up, and I was doing a general nutrition program. I don't know if you know Tone It Up. They have
Mhm.
become a big brand now with protein powders and gummy vitamins and an app. But when they started, it was a much more kind of organic, fitness plan. They had a nutrition plan, recipes. And so I bought that and kind of started following their principles. And it taught me a lot about eating more quality foods. But the problem was I lost weight that year doing CrossFit, but I also lost 3 pounds of muscle.
Yep.
So I lost fat, but I lost 3 pounds of muscle despite lifting the heaviest weights I'd ever lifted in my life, working out 3 days a week. So then I decided I'll just eat all the food because I see my friend at CrossFit who's 16% body fat eating ice cream and pizza post workout, and she looks ripped. And so I tried that, and guess what? It didn't work for my body. I gained
No way.
yeah, shocker. I gained 10 pounds of fat in 3 months, and I was very unhappy because here I am, I was now at this point doing 2 hours of CrossFit 5 days a week. I was going to open gym and for an hour lifting, working on skills, and then doing an hour class. So this was the point where I hired a nutritionist. And for the first time in my life, I learned about eating the correct quantity for my body. And I was like, oh, there actually is like a magical number for my body that optimizes things. So in 3 months, I lost 9 pounds of fat, gained a pound of muscle, and was the strongest I'd ever been in the gym. Was PRing every lift in the gym. And I was like, it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what's been missing. I followed my passion and interest. I got certified in the nutrition program that I had been coached inside of. There were deficiencies in the certification program that I had to self teach and discover and play around with. But I started managing my own nutrition and I was like, I did it, cracked the code. And within like 3 months of me getting certified, I had the idea, I wonder if I could coach other people. And signed my first client for my CrossFit gym, and the rest is history.
Awesome. I love it. And our stories are so similar in so many ways, but I love talking to health professionals or people who have that background. So I'm so curious, like working in the ER was certainly a challenge for you, personally in that lifestyle, but I'm really what did you see most or what was the most surprising thing to you about that experience in thinking about health?
Wow, yeah, there's so many layers to working in the ER, and I'm so grateful for the experience. I think one of the biggest takeaways is I do not take my health for granted.
Mhm.
I think so many people are taking their health for granted and taking risks with their health and kind of it's not biting them in the butt yet. So they're like, oh, I can keep getting away with it. And I know that chances are you're not going to be able to get away with it forever because I've seen the consequences in the ER. So, like, for example, I saw a lot of lifestyle diseases. So, hypertension, high blood pressure, heart attacks, diabetes type 2, stroke. I saw a lot of mobility issues. I remember there was a patient that I had who wasn't that old, maybe in their 70s. I mean, it's older, but this patient didn't even have the strength to push themselves up in their own bed, let alone stand at a bedside commode. Like they couldn't even hold their own weight to like urinate. And watching that happen has been like seared in my memory. Like I always tell my clients it's great to lose weight and like get fit and all those things, but like I want to stand up off a toilet by myself when I'm 85.
1,000%. It's
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's squats, PS, everybody.
exactly. Like just practice sitting down in a chair with some weights and standing back up, right? Like that quadriceps strength is so key to functionality and mobility as we age. But I think a lot of people just don't think about future consequences. And I see that with nutrition, right? Like I'm going to eat these things today and I don't, in 4 weeks it's going to show up on my body, but they're not like dealing with the fact that what you do today has a future consequence for you.
I couldn't agree more. I'm like, exact and it's interesting too because I think and I've had this episode planned for so long and every time I go to do the research, I get overwhelmed and I like have to push it to the side, but the idea of like what healthcare costs actually are and comparing that to what we spend on our health today because the truth is we're spending it somewhere. It's just a function of if we're spending it today or tomorrow.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people struggle when they're like maybe looking at hiring a health coach or nutritionist. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, maybe I can do it cheaper. Or maybe I can do this other thing. And, it's like, would you really skimp on like getting a surgeon to operate on you if you needed that surgery? Probably not. You probably wouldn't be like, what's the cheapest option? Like
I
what
could buy a scalpel at CVS and read a book, right?
can I get a
I got
friend to
this.
do this for me? Yeah. But, like, people don't get that, yeah, you're gonna pay for it somehow. You're either gonna pay for it in your healthcare deductible, you're gonna pay for it in your hospital bills, you're gonna pay for it in the productivity at your work. You're gonna pay for it in the relationship with your kids. you're going to pay for it in your children's health, your partner's health. And so I think actually thinking through the consequences of not taking care of your health helps people start to realign their priorities in life.
Absolutely. So, you and I both are really big on nutrition education and science-based information. But a lot of what I've been talking about this month is also what's coming at us is all this misinformation and contradictory information. So, let's walk through a few things from your perspective that people are really misunderstanding. Right? Like that time when you're like, "Oh, I'll eat what my CrossFit friend is eating." That's got to be the answer. Right? So what are some of the things that you see maybe are the biggest mistakes?
Yeah, so number one is thinking that quantity of what you eat does not matter. I've been seeing this strange trend recently in the health and nutrition space that calories really aren't that important. That's like saying, like, putting gasoline in your car really isn't that important. You can actually drive 800 miles without gas. You just need some oil. Like, it's against the
Yeah.
law of physics and thermodynamics. If you think calories don't matter, try not eating for 3 months, and you will quickly discover that calories do matter, okay? Now, people have misconceptions too, though, that sometimes they think, "Okay, calories do matter, but I need to eat less all the time." That can be wrong too. You can plateau from undereating. You can destroy muscle tissue from undereating. You can binge from overeating. Like, there's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
So I'd say one of the most common conceptions is misconstruing the importance of quantity and understanding the correct quantity for your body. It may actually be more than you think you need to eat. It may be less. It may be cycling through some different schemes. Another thing that I think people misconstrue is what my skinny friends eat, I can eat. And this is neglecting a core principle that we all have a unique insulin sensitivity. So you have a different response to insulin than your friend does. And I've actually developed a quiz that my clients take to self assess their insulin sensitivity and then learn how to actually improve it. Because the beautiful thing about insulin sensitivity is it's not a fixed thing. You actually can take action to improve it. So I think those are two of the core concepts that I see people really misconstrue. Also, that you can eat whatever you want as long as it's a healthy food or a clean food. And the truth is, you can gain lots of fat eating bananas, avocado, turkey, sweet potato, just like you can if you're eating Cheetos and ice cream. So I'd say those are kind of the three core things that I see.
I want to add one to that. Or maybe two actually. One is what you were talking about with working out, right? And
Mm.
like because I think working out it adds another layer and we get so much information about like, well, if you're working out, you should be adding these things. Or
Mm.
like when you and I, like I used to come to New York in the summers for internships in college, and never was I more active, but yet never did I gain more weight as quickly.
Yes, and you true hopefully my story has driven this home. Like, I'm doing CrossFit 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I gained 10 pounds of fat. It was not muscle. I had body composition scans done. It was definitely fat. I hope people understand you cannot outwork a bad diet. And I have a lot of posts on
Yes.
this if people want to understand more of the science behind this. But exercise can trigger increases in appetite. We tend to overestimate the calories burned during exercise, underestimate the food that we're eating, and
Yep.
all of those things can set you up for going the opposite direction of what you want.
Exactly. And then the other one you just touched on now, which was appetite, right? And sort of hunger signals. And I've talked about this before. I feel like intuitive eating has become like the latest fad diet. You know, and it can be a real challenge, especially with leptin sensitivity and those kinds of things where it can be very confusing or even inaccurate to pay
Yeah.
attention to some of those signals at times, depending on what's going on.
Yes, I love that you brought this up too. I teach my clients this too, that you can actually be hungry, but actually not need more food biologically. And you can also be not hungry and in a deficit. And this has to do with the different ways we're signaling to the body. If you're drinking all liquid sugar calories, you could be ingesting a huge amount of calories and still feel hungry, right? Versus eating a meal where you're in a deficit. And so it's interesting you brought up intuitive eating. I actually hired an intuitive eating coach this summer because I wanted to experiment with intuitive eating. I wanted to learn more about it because I always want to learn what's out there and
Mhm.
how my and I gained 10 pounds of fat in like 6 weeks. That's how quickly I gained the weight. Now I'm losing it. I've lost about 5 pounds of it, and I'm going back using the methods that I've learned that work. But it was fascinating to me that, you know, like, it was so easy for me to gain fat, and my coach at the time was like, "Well, it might be that you maintain at a higher weight." And I was like, "Maybe, or maybe I'm just, like, way overeating and, like, I'm eating not fully, like, when I'm hungry." It was a very interesting experience, and it taught me a lot, but I think you're right that intuitive eating has issues within it as well, and I think it can be
Mhm.
promoted as, like, the holy grail of eating, like screw diet culture, all these things. 95% of diets fail. My philosophy is, well, do 95% of diets really fail? Or did you just stop doing the things that you need to do to be healthy?
Right. Right. And I think too, like when I talk about intuitive eating, like I think there's a progression and there are moments and times where we do want to get back in touch with our body and pay attention. But I also think there's a balance in understanding the science of how the body works and the nutrition and some of those signals to understand, as you were just saying before, right? Am I hungry and yet nutritionally satiated
Right.
or vice versa?
Or sometimes you might not be hungry, but if you've been training hard at the gym that day or whatever, you actually might need to eat to replenish your body. Another flaw
Yeah.
in intuitive eating I've discovered from practicing it and experimenting with it is my body might tell me I'm hungry and my body might tell me I'm full, but my body doesn't actually know that it needs protein, right? Or it doesn't actually know the best ratio of fats to carbs. It just knows food, right? So the knowledge that we have from nutrition science and sports science now, we can actually optimize those numbers. But your intuition actually doesn't tell you that. It's kind of like when people are like, oh, if you have a craving for orange juice, you must be deficient in vitamin C, right? There's actually no science that supports that. And if that were true, then people wouldn't have gotten scurvy in the 18th century because intuitively they would have known I need to eat something with vitamin C to prevent this scurvy. That didn't happen. So I think we have to like make sure we're thinking about things scientifically and not buying into some of these weird myths that we hear.
Yes, 1000%. And along those lines, you and I are both not big into like meal plans.
Correct.
And we're going to shift into talking about what we want to do instead of meal plans. But tell us like why your anti-meal plan.
I just did like a whole post on this, like a rant. I did like a whole video, like meal plans are trash. Let me be clear about this. I think done for you meal plans are not helpful. I think sitting down and looking over your week and maybe sketching out some ideas of what you might want to eat and making sure you have some ingredients on hand, I think that can be helpful, right? So doing
Yep.
your own kind of general meal plan. But I have personally followed meal plans myself and I even experimented creating meal plans for clients. Here's what I discovered: the clients didn't ever use them. I made meal plans and they didn't use them. So then as a coach, I'm trying to understand why is this not helpful for people? Why are they not using it? Well, a meal plan tells you what to eat, but like you might want something different that day. This is where intuitive
Yep.
eating can be helpful, right? Like actually I know I need protein, I know I need carbs, I should have some fats, but actually I don't want chicken and sweet potato and broccoli. I actually want cottage cheese and bread and avocado, right? Like I want some different combinations. So I don't believe in done for you meal plans because I also think it's the opposite of owning your nutrition. And I am very big on empowering women with knowledge around nutrition so they can be free of a nutritionist, free of a nutrition coach, because that was my story, right? Once I
Yep.
got empowered with the knowledge, I didn't need a coach anymore. I became self accountable. I became my own coach. So I'm very committed that other women get that information. And if you're having done for you meal plans just spit out at you, you are ultimately not owning your nutrition. Another issue that people don't like to talk about is laziness, right? It's very like untrendy to talk about how maybe we are lazy at times in our lives, but we all have laziness in us as human beings, right? And I personally think done for you meal plans are a way to like stay in laziness and as opposed to doing the work yourself of thinking through what you might want to eat.
Absolutely. It's so interesting too, because what was hitting me, even as you were saying some of this too, is when we have the rules, it pushes us out of paying attention to our own body sometimes, right? Like what you were saying about, oh, well, the menu says I'm eating this, but what I really feel like is that. And that's part of the snowball of how we can get into a lot of these places of complicated signals and understanding our body signals because we've ignored them, you know?
Definitely. And it can really limit your social life too. So I think it's so important that you learn knowledge, systems, frameworks, methodology that are underpinning nutrition because when you go out to a restaurant, you need to know how to order things. And my clients love to travel, they love to go out to eat, they love to socialize, they have vibrant social lives. Like just this past week, I've been out for dinner twice, right? And it's like now because I understand nutrition, I have a better grasp of like what I should order that's going to fit best with my particular goals. And I went out with a friend a few weeks ago who's following some kind of restrictive meal plan from her fitness coach. And she like wanted to look at the menu ahead of time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she was like, oh, yeah, there's nothing on the menu I can eat. I'll just get a side of Brussels sprouts. Meanwhile, I'm ordering like a pizza.
Right.
Right? And like she's getting Brussels sprouts. And it was so interesting because I was like, wow, she's so restricted. And that is because she's on a meal plan.
Absolutely. I'm so big. I'm like, if your plan, whatever it is holding you back from living your life, it's not the plan for life. Like we
Mm,
can't follow it for forever if it doesn't allow us to live our lives.
that's so
So
good.
so we'll dig into more of this and sort of what we do want to focus on, all that good stuff, after a short message from our partner for this episode, DNA Miracles. Because every child is a miracle. DNA Miracles provides the highest quality body and wellness products designed for babies, children, and expectant mothers. All products are gentle, easy to use, and 100% effective when used as directed. DNA Miracles partner with leading health professionals and scientists who follow the highest standards in ingredient selection to create the most effective skin, hair, and health solutions. As natural as possible, DNA Miracles is the best and safest option on the market for you and your little miracle. From expert pediatricians to real family testimonials, everyone has fallen in love with DNA Miracles. So I've told you guys before about the DNA Miracles natural bath time box because it's such a great gift. It gives you the natural foaming wash and shampoo, the natural hydrating body lotion, the natural diaper cream, and the natural soothing ointment. And I bring it up because it's not just for babies. So the foaming wash and shampoo, it's so gentle that if you have sensitive skin or any sensitivities, it could be a great choice. The ointment, we're in winter, although maybe not for you in Austin, but for winter with like dry, cracked skin, maybe like your heels or whatever, it's amazing. Like I put the ointment on, put socks on, go to bed. So magical. And the hydrating lotion works so well too. And it doesn't leave you greasy, all that stuff. So the whole bath time box plus like the little gift box that comes in is 57.50. The ointment on its own is a whopping 22.50 and the lotion is 15.95. Like seriously deals. Plus you get 10% off and free shipping for being a salad with a side of fries listener. So simply text the word miracles, MIRACLES to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word miracles to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, Heather. So instead of meal plans, it's about nutrition. So let's walk us through, you know, the things that we do want to focus on and how we can sort of wrap our head around the proper principles to take us into this new year and beyond.
Yeah, so there's some core principles. So one is really mastering and learning what's the right quantity of food to eat for my body. I call this your unique macronutrient formula because you are unique. And my clients learn a system for calculating their unique macronutrient formula in a very flexible way. So we don't have rigid percentages. We have flexible frameworks. We have guidelines. So, for example, if you wanted to try to start eating the correct macronutrient formula, obviously I don't know your body who's listening, but one simple thing you could do just try to start eating 100 grams of protein a day. I say for women, triple digits, just try to hit triple digits. This is really backed up by science because we know that as we age, we have more anabolic resistance, which means it's harder for your body to build muscle. And there was a huge meta-analysis done that found that the like RDA recommendation for protein was drastically inadequate for retaining muscle mass in the older adults. So older adults are those of us over 35, so I am included.
Me
But
too. Yeah.
yeah, that you not only need more protein overall, you need a higher protein dose at each meal to turn on muscle protein synthesis. So a lot of people struggle to eat more protein initially, and it feels like so much. But the science supports that if you want to retain muscle mass, especially you want to stand up off a toilet by age 85, that you should be eating more protein. So I would start with 100 grams. Another thing that I work with my clients on is their unique insulin sensitivity. So
Mhm.
understanding, how does my body respond to carbohydrates? How does my particular body respond to different carbohydrates? My friend with the six pack, she's got a very high insulin sensitivity. She can eat sugar, candy, all the things. She tends not to gain fat. I eat those things, I gain fat pretty quickly. All right. So you can, without even doing my formal assessment, you can start to gauge your insulin sensitivity just by asking yourself, do I tend to gain fat quickly when I eat sugar, white carbohydrates, or alcohol? If the answer is yes, you probably have lower insulin sensitivity. And the less of those higher glycemic types of carbohydrates you eat, the more accelerated your fat loss results you will see. Another principle I like to teach is called alcohol accounting. So it's a different type of AA. All right. So it's a way to understand alcohol, how to account for it properly. And I tell women, a quick tip for y'all listening: if you're trying to improve your fat loss, but you like to drink and you don't want to do dry January, just try to drink no more than 1 to 2 drinks a week. That can make a huge difference in your body composition and fat loss goals. And then, like, really finding, I call it finding your frequency. What's the ratio of quality to play foods that you can eat? I don't like the word cheap foods or even junk foods. I like play foods. I stole that from intuitive eating. But what's the ratio of quality to play foods that I can eat that is sustainable for me, that also gets me the results I want? I teach my clients, the more sustainable you're eating, the slower your fat loss might be. The faster your fat loss, the lower the sustainability is. So, like, what's the ratio where you feel good at both the time frame you're achieving your result, and the sustainability? So my clients might determine they feel great at 90-10 quality to play food.
Mhm.
Somebody else might be like, I'm 80-20, and somebody else might be like, I'm 75-25. If you're like 30% quality foods to 70% play foods, you're probably gaining fat rapidly. Okay. But those are some of the core principles that I teach that help women understand nutrition and start to get results without rigid rules.
I love it. So, one of the things too that I think gets so confusing, especially as we talk about macros, right? Let's talk about fat for a second. Um, and how do you teach sort of the role of fat and where that fits into your macro
Mhm.
formula?
Yes. So fats and carbs, we want to think about as energy sources, and we want to think about protein kind of like its own category. So we want to think about fats and carbs being somewhat interchangeable when it comes to energy needs. Research has shown that if you're in a caloric deficit and your protein is constant and at a good place, you can kind of flex carbs and fats typically and get great results. So that's why I like to not have rigid rules around fat percentages or carb percentages. Personally, I have found that you tend to perform better athletically with higher carbs and lower fats, and you can get a little more like if you're lifting weights and doing CrossFit and high intensity, if your fats are a little bit lower, you tend to shred a little bit faster, has been my experience with clients and myself. But some people prefer more fats. And so I teach my clients like, okay, like these are the reasons that maybe you'd go higher fat, lower carb, uh, lower fat, higher carb, the differences. So, fat is necessary for hormone health for women. It's necessary for cell membrane function, for certain vitamins to be absorbed. But typically, we really only need about 20 to 25% of our calories daily from fat, which is really maybe like 40 to 50 grams, maybe 60 grams. So, like a lot of people tend to overeat way more fats than they need. And they're also not necessarily eating quality fats, right? They're
Yep,
eating hydrogenated fats, trans fats, things like that.
for sure. And so let's talk about the activity for a second because we have such a tendency to overestimate our activity, underestimate our fuel, and yet we do sort of need to take it into account. So, how do you advise people to accurately assess that balance?
Totally. Well, I think one of the first things to do is don't get obsessed with calorie tracking on your device. So I enjoy using my Apple Watch and I like to turn on the activity tracker when I'm doing a workout. But the primary reason I like to do that is to see my heart rate, not to see calories burned. So if you are relying on some type of device to tell you how many calories burned, they can be wildly inaccurate, right? They could really underestimate it, they could overestimate it. So I tend not to use that. I tend to focus more on how am I feeling in my body and am I getting the results that I want from those workouts? And how many steps am I getting? So we focus a lot on walking as a target, including the total cumulative movement you've made throughout the day. So it could be walking around, getting breakfast ready, walking to your car. It could be an intentional walk after work, etc. What's the total cumulative number of steps you're getting? Because walking is actually more helpful for fat loss than most workouts. And I discovered this both myself and with clients. Like I would have clients come to me who were doing CrossFit 5 days a week, but I'd look at their step count and they were getting like 2 to 3,000 steps and they were really struggling to lose fat. Whereas I'd have clients who were just walking and like losing 30 pounds, like
Mhm.
in like 3 months. So walking is very important for fat loss because you burn a higher percentage of fat in walking or low intensity steady state than you do in like hit. Now you might burn a greater percentage overall of calories in hit, but as a percentage of fat you burn less. So walking is key. And then some women overtrain. Most women only need to train 3 to 4 days a week plus walking for optimum fat loss results. And weightlifting is really good for women's fat loss, more than hours of cardio.
1,000%. I always like cardio is one of the biggest misconceptions in
Totally.
that
It
space.
increases
Yeah.
stress hormones. It can increase your appetite. It can eat into your muscle tissue and decrease muscle tissue. It's kind of boring and like yeah, and I think for me, there's research that supports weightlifting specifically can help women's anxiety. So if we're doing exercise that helps reduce anxiety for women, so weightlifting, walking, yoga, for example, all great forms of exercise that reduce female anxiety. If as women we are not feeling as anxious, we are less likely to turn to food to cope with those negative emotions. So while my program is really about mastering the quantity of what you're eating, the quality of what you're eating, those ratios and frequencies, mindset is also a component of my program that comes into play because if you are not dealing with the way that you cope with things in the world, it's very easy to fall into food as your only coping mechanism. Doesn't mean you can't have a bowl of mac and cheese on a rough night, okay? It's not bad. It's not bad to sometimes cope with some food, right? But like in general, we don't want that to be like our primary coping mechanism.
And it's interesting too because I think, we're talking like not meal plans, but principles here. And that piece of allowing for those situations, recognizing I'm actually using this to cope versus I'm using this for fuel is a really important piece that in others, like if we're following a meal plan, a prescribed outline, and we want those things, then it's exacerbating. It's like this downward spiral of, oh my God, I screwed it up. I failed. I can't do this. All those kinds of things, which really are just exacerbating and counterproductive.
Yeah, I just actually did a post about this, about overcoming your fear of failure. And as human beings, we want to continue playing games that we win at.
Mhm.
Like, I used to play Scrabble with my dad, and my dad is way better at Scrabble, and, like, halfway through the game, his score would be, like, 350, and I'd be at, like, 120, and I'm like, "This isn't even fun anymore, I'm losing, I don't even wanna keep playing." I'm like, I don't wanna even finish the game, I'm out, right? And that happens to a lot of women with their nutrition. They set themselves up at this, like, extreme high bar, and then, like, if they're not perfect, they're like, I'm failing. And then because
Yep.
they don't want to fail at a game, they quit. And it's like, instead of quitting the game, like, let's change the metric of failure. So one of the concepts I use in my program is, we have different targets. So we use like the Olympian model. So like there's first place, second place, third place, fourth place. Maybe you didn't even hit the podium, but you made it to the games that day, like, and we use that to assess your progress. So my clients learn to say, instead of, oh, I didn't hit my macros today, they're like, oh, I got a silver day. Or like, oh,
Mhm.
this was a bronze day. And that starts to really empower them to understand that there is no failure. There's just different levels of performance that will give them access to different levels of results.
Totally. And you touched on this before, but I wanna go back to stress and hormones because as another piece of I think what we like, similarly to underestimating the impact of alcohol on our results and on our health, I think stress, and I talk about it all the time, but stress and hormones, so I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So, wow, I went through my own hormonal journey right after I had like lost this weight, started my business. I had quit nursing. I was all of a sudden, like, my period was abnormal. I had like a 3 week long period, and it turned out I had an ovarian cyst. I went in and had surgery to remove the cyst. And it really helped open my eyes to the importance of taking care of my female body, my cycle, my hormones. And I got really interested and passionate about it. And while it's not the core principles of what I teach, I do ask my clients, what day of your cycle are you on every week, so we can understand how their cycle and their hormones are affecting their sleep, their energy, etc. And I'm very in tune with my cycle now and how it can affect me. Stress is a huge driver of both eating patterns, and it can affect your sleep, which can affect your cortisol, which can affect belly fat storage, all kinds of cascades. I think it's important not to ascribe your fat loss fully to your hormones.
Yep.
Like, I see women do that. Oh, it must be my hormones. And I'm like, let's control the nutrition variable first. If after fully controlling the nutrition variable, we're not seeing results, let's go invest in some hormone panels. But I tend to believe in starting with nutrition and then dealing with hormones, because I find that for 90% of women, it's not the hormones. And even women with complex hormonal issues, like I have two clients with Hashimoto's right now. One was like convinced she couldn't lose weight. And now that she's confronting her nutrition properly, first of all, she's down like 9 pounds. And that's amazing for her. But she's also like admitting to herself, oh, I've been using my Hashimoto's as an excuse. Like, my eating's actually been a wreck.
Yeah, for sure. And when we talk about hormone panels, um, I get frustrated sometimes because blood panels I actually had this conversation with a client the other day. Blood panels look at a single moment. And so there are a lot of other tests that maybe might not be your doctor's go-to that we
Yes.
might wanna ask for. So what are some of the things that you recommend? I know did you do or did you recommend, like, the Dutch test?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I have personally done a Dutch test, and I sometimes recommend them to clients. So the Dutch test is a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. That's where the word Dutch comes from. It's not from the Netherlands. And you do the test at 4 discrete periods of time. So, like, at 5 p.m., bedtime, first thing when you wake up, 2 hours after you wake up. So you're getting actually to see the fluctuation of your hormone levels. Like you said, you're not just getting one snapshot. And then you need to have a practitioner help you kind of interpret the results. There's a lot of functional health coaches that will interpret those
Mhm.
results for you. One of the downsides with something like the Dutch that I find is a lot of these functional health coaches then want to push supplements on you. And then, because that's their business model is supplementation. And while I think there are many supplements that can be very beneficial, and I take certain supplements, I think there are supplements that might be snake oil too.
Totally.
And there's a lot of supplements that actually there's no double blind, placebo controlled, trials or research on them. So while you might feel better taking the supplement, correlation doesn't mean cause. It could be something else causing that. So I'm hesitant to require clients or recommend that they start spending $300 a month on supplements now, right? But I do think the Dutch test can be very helpful and reveal certain things. And if a client wants to do that, I can always look at their Dutch test after they've also had a practitioner look at it. But it's interesting, even doing my Dutch test, and I've had some other clients do Dutch tests, and I actually was just on a Dutch test review with the client yesterday. The thing that I hear the practitioner always say is, well, let's try to reduce your stress. What can we do to reduce your stress? And so
Yep.
it's like, even without doing a freaking Dutch test, I can practically give you the prescription, which is reduce your stress.
Totally.
So maybe you don't need to go drop $500 on a Dutch test and $300 a month on supplements just yet. Like, maybe we start with like really going after your stress. And I think a lot of women are living very stressed out lives, and they want it to be a quick, simple fix, other than your lifestyle and life needs an overhaul, or you need to learn some different ways to manage the stress you're dealing with.
And I feel like that's like the perfect, almost like mic drop as we end this year and people are, here's your alternative to the resolution, right? Let's look at the lifestyle. Let's focus on one thing. Maybe that's the stress, and instead of the one thing being these crazy rules of some menu plan.
Totally.
Anything we missed or anything else you want to share before we do our rapid fire off topic questions?
The other thing I just like to share with people is kind of two things. We both are dealing with our personal responsibility for our body, and we're also dealing with living in a certain particular environment. And I think it's helpful to never just blame the environment or just put it on you as personally responsible. It's helpful to look at those two things together. So while you might have some character issues you need to deal with, like laziness at times, or gluttony, or like poor coping mechanisms, or et cetera, right? And I'm only speaking from personal experience. I have dealt with all of those things. It's also helpful to remember that we live in what's now called an obesogenic environment. So we have a ton of cheap, accessible food if you're an American. And tons of gourmet food is also very high in calories. So whether it's fast food or gourmet food, it's all super calorie dense now. And many of us are knowledge workers. So we're sitting in front of our computer all day, living sedentary lives. And so those forces come together, and it can be very challenging for you. So just know that, like, I try not to sugarcoat things, but like, it's going to be a challenge for you to lose fat and maintain it and sustain it. It's probably going to be that way for the rest of your life. And like, it doesn't need to be the only thing you focus on. You don't need to be obsessed with maintaining your body perfectly for the rest of your life. But if you care about, maintaining your weight and your strength and not gaining a bunch of weight as you age, then you are going to need to be proactive and smart about learning how to navigate this particular food landscape.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. Are you ready? Rapid fire off topic questions I ask every expert who joins us.
I'm ready. I love rapid fire.
Okay. What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done for your health this week?
The best thing I've done for my health this week has been taking long walks daily. The naughtiest thing I've done this week is I had a glass of Prosecco and a free limoncello shot that was brought to me for my friend's birthday. And let's just say that was too much alcohol for me, even just 2 drinks.
I get it. If you weren't a nutritionist and health and mindset coach, what would you do?
This is supposed to be rapid fire, and now I'm stuck. I always wanted to be like an investigator, like a private detective. So I think I might try to go become like a detective somewhere. I'm not comfortable with guns or criminals, and I'm terrified of most things. But if there was some kind of like intellectual detective, I think I would enjoy that.
I'm with you. I way too many true crime things happening that I listen to. Okay. Favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise? Could be fiction.
Mm. I'm going to drop a spiritual book that's really impacted me. It's called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. And that book has really shaped my beliefs and faith as I've become an adult.
Nice. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Mm, probably like depression. I think that's such a hard health issue for people to deal with. And my brother has depression and I've struggled with it too at times. And I see the difficulty how it can affect people.
Totally. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
I love, snooping, so I would be invisible. Like, I, love seeing inside people's lives and listening to conversations and, if again, that private detective in me, so I think I would be I would be invisible so I could listen in and see everything.
I love it. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Dog owners who don't pick up their dog's poop on the I'm like, "You know your dog's gonna poop, you should always have poop bags with you. Why is this so hard for you?"
All right, finally, in your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
I think it's going to be more individualized, nutrition just in general in health, I think it's going to be using genetics to personalize things more. But again, I don't think that's going to be like the holy grail because we're still dealing with human behavior and those core issues of laziness or difficulty persevering in the face of challenge, etc. So I don't think there's ever going to be a technology that completely fixes things. I think it's going to come down also to your your attitude and your behavior.
Totally. All right, we could talk for forever. Tell everybody how to connect with you, where to learn more, all the things.
Yeah, so my favorite place to hang out is Instagram. And so I am there every day doing videos, posts. It's at Heather McConochie. So you can follow me there. And I'm on the interwebs in the metaverse somewhere. So the Facebook, the LinkedIn, my website is heathermcconaughey.com. But if you want to connect with me on a daily basis and see what's most fresh and my latest content, then come to Instagram.
Excellent. Awesome. Do you have another minute to hang out for a nutrition nugget?
I do.
Awesome. This week, we're talking about NYE. So traditionally, right, that means New Year's Eve, right? But of course, I want to offer a different take, right? So let's think of NYE as note your echo. So maybe given the end of the year, we're thinking about, 2021 and into 2022. And we can also think about, it doesn't have to be at this time. We could really do this at any point. But what is it that you're putting out into the world? Right? What are we creating based on our own choices and who we are and how we're operating? And sometimes I say this and people are like, well, how do we know? Right? Like we might think it's one thing, but what's the reality? So here's a couple thoughts. One is look at the young people in your life, right? They are incredible mirrors or echoes, if you will. If you have people who love you enough to be truly honest with you, you could certainly ask, right? But I also say start to observe what's coming to you. So this is a little like on the spiritual side, but we receive what we give. So if you're feeling like you want something more or something different than what you're getting, think of that being your echo and saying, what can I give or do such that my echo brings me more of that to me? So perhaps this gives us a new way to reflect on the past year or a different way to think about our intentions for the new year. So take a moment, note your echo. Now, in the traditional sense of New Year's Eve, I do want to say to everybody, Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for listening, for following, for being a podcast member, for being just an incredible member of this community. Every comment on social media, the messages and the emails that you send me, or the questions you submit, I appreciate them more than you know. And my favorite thing in the world is hearing from you. So I am beyond grateful for all we've really accomplished since the start of recording in August 2019 and then in this calendar year. So if someone, I just have to say, like, if somebody were to tell me in January of 2021 what I'd be working on right now as we close the year, I probably would not have believed them. So it's truly magical. And so I just want to say thank you. And finally, my wish for you, may you look back on 2021 with smiles and laughter. I know it hasn't been the easiest, but know that you are incredible and all that you do for yourself and for those around you, even when you don't realize it. So I love this thing. I don't know if it's a quote or whatever. I once saw it on a card and it just stuck with me. So may the best day of your past be the worst day of your future. And with that, Happy New Year, my friends. So, Heather, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was such a delight, and I absolutely loved chatting with you.
Likewise. We'll have to do it again on your show.
Definitely.
So, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Treppek. Connect with me on Instagram at Jenn Treppek, JennTreppek. Actually, it's that handle, all the social media places. Our website, A Salad with a Side of Fries. So the website or social media, send a message, share your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me. Of course, if you're not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. You'll get this week's recipe for the slow cooker turkey chili and butternut squash, Heather's recipe fix with the discount. We'll give everybody the link to the recipe fix, but our members get the discount. Your quarterly live session, just you and me. Remember, you don't have to do it this week, but you do have to book it by this week. We can do it in January. So until next week, or really all the time, remember, no grand meal plans required, just the principles of nutrition and a bit of self-awareness. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.